Youorns. Greetings, fellow Watford fans. Omar here, and it's time for the YouOrns 10-minute take on Sunderland 2, Watford 2 at the Stadium of Light. Well, Watford today had nothing to play for. They were mathematically eliminated last night by Millwall, courtesy of Millwall's 3-2 win at Blackpool, and that win for Millwall ensured that Watford would not be in the playoffs and would remain in the championship next season. So with that information, Watford were coming into this game really with house money against the Sunderland side, who had known very clearly that had they won this game, they would take a really big step towards the playoffs, because they would need to then win at Preston the following Bank Holiday Monday on May the 8th to secure a playoff place. And it was a game that was seen by 45,000 people today at the Stadium of Light. And most of those, the vast majority, 99% of those, were Sunderland fans. 44,944 fans were in the building. Yeah, it was that big a crowd. It was a massive crowd. And it was Sunderland who felt the pressure of that crowd more than it was Watford. Sunderland did not have a good grasp of this game early on, and it was Watford that played the most controlled and composed football of the two sides. And they looked as if they were going to score. They had chances with Watford, and one of those paid off in the 17th minute. Christian Kabasele heading in a goal for Watford to give the Orns a 1-0 lead. It was Christian Kabasele's first goal in almost 2.5 years. That's right. December 2020 was the last time that Christian Kabasele found the back of the net for Watford. Watford looked in good shape then, and although Sunderland sometimes had some forays toward Watford's box, a lot of these forays were easily repelled by the Watford defense, who, with Kabasele in that back line, in fact, he was named to the starting lineup as captain, looked stalwart, looked clear, looked composed, looked in control. The defense was very good first half, kept Sunderland at bay, much to the frustration of the home crowd at the Stadium of Light. And then you knew that when Watford went into the break up 1-0, having missed a couple of other chances in the half, you knew that Sunderland were going to come out fired up in the second half. The desperation was there for Sunderland's second half, and Watford reverted to their bad habits. In the second half, Watford, despite having some chances to go up 2-0 earlier on in the second half, missed a point-blank range open goal, which was just beyond me how that even happened. That would have given Watford a much earlier 2-0 lead. But then, 25 minutes into the second half, Watford did get that lead, and it was Ryan Porteous off a set piece, really out of nothing, heading the ball into the back of the Sunderland net, doubling the Watford lead at 2-0. Watford looked then to be a team that was seeing toward the finish line. They looked like they had an opportunity to finish this game off. But the biggest turning point in this game was what happened less than a minute later, when Luke O'Nien, a former Watford man, came in and scored the goal for Sunderland. A goal, by the way, I think that Daniel Bachmann should have done a lot better at, diving to his left. Ball went past him and into the back of the net. And I really thought that was the turning point of the entire contest. From there, Watford were really nervy. In fact, just before that Luke O'Nien goal, Sunderland should have scored previously. I think a shot hit the bar or something like that. It was astonishingly close. And how Sunderland didn't score just a minute after that, or just before that Luke O'Nien goal, really beyond me. So, Sunderland in this game, second half, came to life as you knew they would. They gave Watford a real battle. They were sending torrents and torrents of players going forward. Tony Mowbray, the Sunderland head coach, was making change after change, and the changes were working. Watford just didn't deal with them very well. And you saw how the defending became really ramshackle. It reverted to what we've seen all season long in Watford, a team that doesn't defend well as a cohesive unit when the game is on the line. When you need to get over the line, this team does not defend well, and this team does not communicate well in the defense. And we saw that with the goal that Sunderland scored that would give them a share of the points, as Watford had chances and Sunderland kept pouncing on Watford in that box, and Watford became more vulnerable. There was an inevitable slip-up, and that slip-up was the benefit of that man from Sunderland, Patrick Roberts, who, by the way, was in and out of this game. I think he had some chances, but the final end product to him was not very good, and he did not make the most of his chances. But he certainly knew where the goal was when time really counted. And that time was 7 minutes of injury time with Watford up 2-1 that really did benefit Sunderland. And in the end, within about roughly, 5.5 minutes of injury time gone, it was that man, Patrick Roberts, who has been a threat against a load of teams this season, who scored that equalizer for Sunderland. And that crowd at the Stadium of Light, they really did roar to life, kind of like shades of the Roker roar from the old days at Roker Park for Sunderland. And that goal really has given Sunderland still a lifeline for a possibility of being in with the playoffs. Now, Sunderland were a team who just last season, if not the season before, were in League One, and they got promoted to the Championship. Actually, they got promoted just last season from League One into the Championship, and they're now bidding to get promoted to the Premier League if they can make the playoffs. I think now for them it will be a tall order. But from a Watford perspective, Watford, again, find a way to snatch a draw from the jaws of victory. We've seen this over and over again this season, especially away from home. 2-0 leads being blown. We saw this in the game just a couple of weeks ago at Coventry City, where Watford are up 2-0. In the second half, they scored a goal, and I think they may have scored both those goals in the first half, but maybe not. But the bottom line with this Coventry game, Watford had a 2-0 lead. In fact, it was the second half that they scored the second goal, if I remember. And then Coventry came in and scored these two goals. In fact, one of those goals was scored pretty soon after Watford advanced their lead to 2-0. We've seen this, of course, in the game against Reading earlier this calendar year. Watford up 2-0 there, can't hold on, and they end up getting a 2-2 draw as they did against Coventry. We saw this in numerous games this season where it was not 2-0 but 1-0 against Burnley this calendar year. Late, Watford leading 1-0, can't hold on. The set piece comes in, and Watford just do not defend it well, and the ball goes into the back of the net. Burnley rescue a point. We've seen this at home as well. We've seen this so many times this season. And that's why Watford are mired in mediocrity in the Championship. 13th place. They've won 15 games. I think they've drawn 15 games, and I think they've lost 15 games. I think that is, and I've not looked at the table, I think that is exactly what the reading is. 15, 15, and 15. And that tells you right away, mediocre. In fact, I think they've been worse than what the table shows. So quite frankly, if you really look at it, I think Watford actually should be even lower in the table than that, because they've had so many poor performances this season, and they've had so many no-show performances this season, that table, that positioning of being 13th is very misleading for me. And if you look at the way Watford have played these games from half to half, the continuity isn't there. The continuity and the consistency isn't there. They had a good, solid first half today, a good professional first half today, where these Watford players played for each other as a team, communicated well with each other, remembered that they are the basics of football that need to be executed. They did most of those in the first half. They played together. They were cohesive. They were decisive. They were calm and composed at the back. They had a good understanding of where each other was on the pitch today in the first half. And they were very clear about that. They were very clear about being aggressive, and they played together as a team, and they did the fundamentals of football. That's what this Watford side did in the first half. But they chucked it all away in the second half. And this failure to put together two good halves of football are the things that have undone Watford throughout this entire campaign and throughout the campaign before that in the Premier League. Now, Watford are trending down and down and down when it comes to the performances, when it comes to the position of themselves as a team at the table, and when it comes to just the way that the mentality of the team is. This men's first team has really bottled it this season, has not been any good, have really had maybe two good performances the entire way, and have had a catalog of blown leads, whether they be at home or away. We've seen these blown leads at home in games against Cardiff just this month alone in April, and April's coming to an end very soon, thank goodness. They've had blown leads at home against Cardiff, blown leads at home against Huddersfield, blown leads at home in several other games as well. I mean, it's just absolutely horrendous. Huddersfield, Cardiff, and there's one other team that I'm forgetting at the minute, but they had a blown lead against them as well. And It's just been that kind of season for Watford. They just cannot get over the line. And I think one of the reasons why that happened in today's game, for example, is that the defensive cohesiveness was not there. The defensive discipline wasn't there. And Watford, again, as I said earlier, missed a few chances in the second half that could have put them out of sight in this game, home and hosed, against the Sunderland side that were playing for everything. The pressure was clearly on Sunderland. The pressure showed, but in the second half, Sunderland dealt with the urgency of the moment better than Watford did. And we saw that very clearly today when Patrick Roberts really, out of nothing, scored a very important goal for Sunderland that may yet well be their lifeline as a possibility of playoff football for them. But for Watford, it's another disappointing finish, another poor result, another failed opportunity to hold on to a 2-0 advantage in a game. I don't know what it is about that scoreline away from home for Watford, but they do not like to lead games 2-0 away from home because they have capitulated yet again in the face of a glorious opportunity to put a stamp on what was the final away game of their championship season in 2022-23. And Watford have only had one away win in this calendar year of 2023. And that came way back on the second day of this year against Norwich City, and they won 1-0 at Carrow Road. But since then, Watford have not mustered an away win, and they end the campaign without winning another away game this calendar year. I think that really tells you everything you need to know about this team, this men's first team. I think the bright spot in the game was Ryan Andrews. Yet again, Ryan Andrews is showing you that he's got a wise head on his shoulders. He's a skilled footballer. He's got good pedigree. His attitude to the game is healthy and robust. He will put in a challenge. He'll put in a tackle. And it was, I think, too bad that he had to come off the pitch, not because he was injured, but Chris Wilder employed a tactical switch and decided to put Wesley Hood in for size and to gird the defensive area. But Wesley Hood's not been particularly good the last month or so. And I thought that the turning point also came in when Ryan Andrews was subbed off. Definitely thought that Ryan Andrews should have stayed on the pitch. He did a very good job there in his position. I thought Christian Cavaselli's game, good in the first half, came unstuck in the second. There was a lot of miscommunications, I think I saw on the pitch, from what I remember at least. And it just did not work. And it's not just Christian Cavaselli. The back line did not effectively defend. They looked very nervous. They looked very nervous after the goal that Sunderland scored. And again, I think that Daniel Bachmann should have done a lot better with that first Sunderland goal. And again, the key of this game was after Ryan Porteous scored for Watford to give us the 2-0 lead. Again, literally about 15 to 30 seconds later, Sunderland got their goal. And it was a very poor goal to give away in that spot. Had Watford been able to settle down and then platform out for another 10 minutes or so, I think Watford could have ended up finding a way over the finish line. But because that Sunderland goal came oh so quickly after Watford had taken that 2-0 lead, doubled their lead to 2-0, I think that that was a key point of this game. And Watford's defending looked very nervous, looked very frenzied, looked very disorganized. Watford lost their shape completely, and then it allowed the onrushing Sunderland to grow with confidence and to continue to attack that Watford goal, which they did. Now, Watford tried to game manage. They tried to game manage as much as they could, but it just wasn't to be for them today. Yet again, another game ends in failure. And Watford, who should have had 3 points, come out of this contest with only 1. This has been the YouOrns 10-minute take.